Naturally, when people are looking for the next piece of media to experience, one of the options tends to be looking for at what's the most popular, whether it's the highest rated online, or your friends' word of mouth, or seeing that one title that always gets talked about everywhere that you can't escape. But I'm sure everyone has at least one popular title that they just never decided to experience for whatever reason. So in this video, I'm going to go over 10 visual novels that I would consider popular, but also ones that I basically have zero desire to read. The first, and by far the easiest to talk about for me, is the Rance series. Basically, almost everything about this series makes me not want to check it out. I'm not super into fantasy settings anymore, there's no voice acting, I'm not particularly interested in gameplay, especially ones that's different across every game, but most importantly, I just do not like Rance as a main character at all. Based on every single thing I've heard about him, especially the fact that he's basically a constant rapist, makes me not want to experience him. It makes me question why so many people simp for him as a main character. The next popular visual novel I have no interest in reading is Noble Works by Yuzusoft. I've had my vocal disagreements about Yuzusoft mostly around some of its humor. However, I've at least checked out basically every modern title either because it has a kind of fun setting, or there's at least one heroine that I was interested in or ended up really liking. However, for me, Noble Works does not have either of those things. There's no supernatural gimmick, I'm not super into the rich girl school setting, and all of the main heroines just do not interest me at all. The earlier Yuzusoft titles are the ones that tended to overuse the humor I complain about so much anyway, so it's a no-brainer that I have no interest in reading Noble Works. The next visual novel I'm going to talk about is Euphoria by ClockUp. I'm not completely against dark stories. There are a few Nitro Plus titles that I both read and quite liked. However, every single thing I've heard about Euphoria makes me not want to read it. I've never liked dark sexual content, and this seems to have that in spades. Many people claim that the ending makes it worth it because it makes Euphoria kinda actually have a story, but the problem is that you have to go through all these shock value H scenes to go through to the end. That's just not something I'm interested in. Among some of my online friends, I've coined the term NSFA, or not safe for Ange. Basically, dark sexual content that instantly makes me not want to look at it. Euphoria 100% emphasizes that. The next title I want to talk about is 428 Shibuya Scramble. This is an unfortunate case because based on the genres it has, it does seem something I would like and be interested in. However, it just has one big thing I do not like about it: the use of real people as sprites and CGs. I'm normally not one to complain about art in visual novels as long as it has a style that's appealing enough. I'm usually not exceptionally picky, especially when it's an anime style. People have said that the real people art in 428 is just something you get over, but I've known about this title for a long time and I still can't get over the art style, and because of that, and the fact that this visual novel has no voice acting, makes it so I basically have no desire to read it. The next title I'm going to bring up is Steins from the ever so popular science adventure series. Now, I know a lot of people are going to raise their pitchforks because this is consistently one of the top 3 highest rated visual novels in the Western community. I would consider the reason why I haven't read this relatively reasonable though. I watched the anime adaptation long before I knew Steins was a visual novel. Considering Steins is one of the few universally acclaimed visual novel adaptations into anime, the fact that I don't really care for most of the main heroines outside Karisu and maybe one other, and the fact that I hear that the original Steins has this really dumb cell phone system you have to do to get all to the routes, it all leads to the mindset that I don't want to read the Steins visual novel, which would also include the Steins Zero visual novel. The next visual novel I'm going to be talking about is the Funbag Fantasy series. Many people have claimed that despite this being a nukige, it actually has a apparently serviceable, potentially decent plot. However, this is just a weird case where I'm not really a fan of the character designs where almost every character has obnoxiously, unrealistically big boobs. This isn't necessarily a 100% turnoff, as I at least gave something like Wagamama High Spec a chance. However, considering that despite Funbag Fantasy apparently having a plot, it's still essentially considered a nukige, so that would mean I have to see a lot of H scenes with these types of character designs, which I just didn't really care to see. If I wanted plot, I could just go to basically any other plot-heavy visual novel instead. The next visual novel I'm going to talk about is Island. One thing that's kind of weird for me is, for the most part, I don't mind if I accidentally or purposefully get spoiled on one big plot twist of a visual novel. In fact, knowing about something could make me even more interested in continuing on. So for example, I'm aware of a certain plot twist that happens towards the end of a King Koi route, as well as the ending of Kara no Shoujo, or The Shell. However, I heard a plot twist that happens at the end of the true route of Island, and that was just one that made me go, wow, this is stupid, I don't want to read this anymore. What doesn't help is that there seems to be what I perceive to be a big age gap between the main character and the main 3 heroines. Those 2 things alone make me not want to read this visual novel at all now. The next visual novel I want to talk about is Slow Damage. People have claimed this is easily one of the best Nitro Plus, cheer-all, and plot-heavy yaoi or boys love visual novels. However, the reason I don't want to read this at all is very simple. I do not care for yaoi or boys love at all. When you double the fact that this was made by Nitro Plus, That would mean the H scenes would be very likely dark. That just makes me even less interested in reading this. The next visual novel I want to talk about is the base version of The House and Fata Morgana. I've been reading visual novels for well over 10 years now, and I've gotten spoiled where if the visual novel doesn't have voice acting, it completely ruins my motivation to read it. That's a big reason why I haven't checked out a lot of EVNs, OELVNs, or Western original visual novels, whatever you call it. Somehow, despite the House of Fata Morgana's praise, it's never gotten a version with full voice acting, or at least a good amount of it. It's unfortunate because I've heard so many good things about this unique plot and good music, but the fact that this visual novel has zero voice acting has essentially killed my interest in reading it. The final visual novel I'm going to talk about on this video is White Album 2. This is generally considered one of the most popular drama-heavy romance visual novels, both in the West and in Japan. I constantly hear praise about how people either love one of the main heroines or how closing chapter is either relatable or life-changing. However, this visual novel in particular, I mostly have no interest in due to a more predicted conceptual sense compared to what I guess I can call more practical reasons I talked in earlier titles in this video. From my understanding, White Album 2 is the epitome of the Utsuge romance. It seems like any path you go on, there's always going to be some kind of heartbreak. I'm not necessarily against Utsuges or depressing stories. Bokuten is one of my all-time favorite visual novels and handles the heartbreaking romance very well. However, White Album 2 to me has a couple issues. First is the fact that it's exceptionally long if you read all of introductory and closing chapter. Bokuten has the advantage of only being like 30 hours. Meanwhile, White Album 2 totaling to about 70 hours does not sound like a fun time when you consider the fact that the cast of characters is quite a bit smaller and less varied than Bokuten. The next reason is going to be hard to not spoil, but I'll do my best. Basically, everything I hear about the main protagonist is that he sounds like a little bitch. This guy looks like the type that can't make up his mind, which is likely a big reason why the drama even happens. When you combine with me not particularly caring for dramatic love triangles, the fact that the main character has a high chance of cheating on someone, and the fact that I would likely have to go through some long, exhausting, depressing moments for 70 hours, these factors alone make me completely uninterested in reading White Album 2 despite its incredibly high praise. On a minor related note, this also applies to White Album 1, the recently released prequel in English. White Album 1 is straight up upfront with the fact that the protagonist is always with his girlfriend even when pursuing other girls' routes. I was hoping to read a White Album series, not a cheating album series. And that's it, 10 visual novels that are popular, but I have no interest in reading. What are your thoughts on the visual novels that I chose? And are there any popular visual novels that you basically don't have any desire to read yourself? Feel free to leave a comment below.